Hey, what's up guys? JSW Cars here. So I'm doing a little, I guess you would say a tutorial on a turbocharger replacement on the 1.4 liter ecotec. This is a Buick Encore 2014. The same motor is in some of other GM vehicles. I'm thinking maybe the Chevy Sonic, possibly, but any of the 1.4 liters should be about the same. It's a pretty common problem. This one's starting to consume oil. The seals are going bad in the turbo. So we're gonna get that fixed up today. I'm gonna have a list down in the description of what tools you need for this job. And I will do my best to walk you guys through it with the setup that I have here and see how I did it. And I'm sure there might be other ways to do it, but I'm gonna try to get the most accurate repair with torque specs and all that good stuff. So first things first, as always, I'm going to disconnect your battery. I'm going to take the negative side off here, which is going to be a 10 mil. If you want to, positive also 10 millimeter. Next step, you want to take your intake suction hose off, coming from your air filter down to your turbocharger. Could use flatheads. It could be a 7 or 8 if you don't want to use flatheads. 7 or 8 millimeter, I believe. Now that our air suction hose is out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and pull this heat shield off of the turbo area. It's 3 of these E10 torque screws. You can see that type right there. It's going to be 3 of those. There's one right there, and there's one farther down. It's hard to see, but right over here. Now that your heat shield is out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and take these engine lift brackets off. They are that same torque style. These are E12s though, so it's slightly bigger. I know this will help later on to get the turbo out of here because it's going to be kind of finicky to get out of here as far as tightness. And another point I want to make here, this all depends on the vehicle's age, where it's from, all that good stuff, but there's a lot of plastic in this engine bay, so you always should be careful with what you're doing. Don't just start really prying on things like to break. I took this hose off, released these from around here, that way I've got some play and can move this around, because this hose needs to come off of your turbo. If you can see it, there's a tab like this on each side. It needs to be squeezed, and then that will release the quick connect, and then that will pop off. So once you have this released, I released this vacuum line from this retainer ring that's attached to this hose, and that little thin vacuum line goes all the way, you can see it, goes all the way to right down here where my hand is on that clamp right there, going into the side of that turbo where that vacuum diaphragm looking assembly is right there. So you're going to release that clamp and that'll all come off with that. So now that I have both of those little and the big hose off, I kind of just wrapped it over here with the hood prop to keep it out of my way. Next thing we're going to do here is we're going to release the, I guess you would say, the clamp around the turbo outlet or exhaust manifold outlet to the converter. So right down here there is a pinch bolt. I've got that socket on. It's a 13 millimeter. So now that I have that band clamp off, I went ahead and also pulled off the O2 sensor, air fuel upstream right here. Snuck in a 22 wrench right here. Got it. It's not really needed to take off, but it's better to have it out of the way so you don't have to deal with it or worry about breaking it or denting it or depinning it. And last thing here before I go to the bottom for a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and take the charge line off of the turbo, which is that one right here. There's a clamp right there. You can get a short flathead in there, pop that off, get it off out of the way. So now that we're down here on the bottom, you want to go ahead and pull off some of your skid plates. Almost everything's 10 millimeter and clips, that style right there, where the outside or the inside pulls down and then the outside. And then we're going to probably go ahead and drain our coolant while we're down here. There's a radiator petcock, I'll show you in just a second. All right, so you have two different skid plates here. Get this one that's further back. That's all 10 mils clips, and there's some Torx in the very back. I think maybe T10 or T15. I'm not pulling them off as of right now. This is the front one, which is 7 millimeter and two 10 millimeters. So I'm getting that out of my way. And for future notice, I'll probably do another video on this, but this is where your intercooler is located on these, right up front. I'll be pulling the bumper off to gain access, pull it out. I'm gonna make sure it gets cleaned, make sure it doesn't have any clogs or flowing issues or leaks. And then our next thing, here we are on the passenger side. Right there is your radiator drain petcock. So this one was loose enough I could start turning it here. You're gonna get you a drain pan and drain the coolant out. And once you start draining it, it might help to take the reservoir cap off to relieve the vacuum pressure so it will drain quicker. This way, when you pull some of your other coolant lines off, you won't make quite as much of a mess. There might still be some in the turbo cooler lines, but this will help a lot. Plus it will flush the system out so you can start new coolant and you're not worrying about, metal, maybe if a bearing was failing in the turbo. So while our coolant is draining, or finishing draining, I'm gonna go ahead and take this line off right here, this cooler line. This right here is a T45, and this one, the other end, is an E10. I'm just trying to get a decent amount of things off of the turbos. There's less that we're trying to move around as we remove the turbo. So that will help a lot, getting things out of your way. And let me clarify, this is actually not a cooler line, it's a lubrication line. This is the oil feed, I believe. Yep, on the top. So one thing you want to check out on these banjo bolts where the oil comes through. The oil likes to sludge up on these ecotecs, and you will get issues like this where the bearing will not get proper flow because the holes will eventually get so clogged it won't even feed oil to the bearing at all, which can cause other issues throughout the motor. Oil starvation through a bearing, sending metal through the rest of the system of the motor, lots of other issues. But make sure you check that out and try to get it cleaned. If not, get another bolt. Most of the time you could probably clean those off. Just make sure they're flowing 100%. Same thing goes on the line here. Make sure it flows very well. There's no restrictions inside of it. Sometimes the best way to preventative while you're doing the turbo is go ahead and change your feed and return lines and or flush them out. So now that your coolant's mostly finished draining, go ahead and put that petcock back in. Make sure it's good and tight so it's not going to drip all over you. And we're going to pull this turbo out with the drain line still attached to the turbo. So what you do here is there's a plastic retaining clip right here at the end of my finger. So you pull that out with like a pick very carefully, don't break it removing it. If something does break, I'm sure you can get this piece that holds to the block. But the line will come out and there'll be O-rings on the line. It's kind of a pressure fit with this retaining lock ring or lock clip right here. So go ahead and pull that out so it'll be out of your way. All right, so back here at the top, we're gonna go ahead and remove these threaded assemblies that were for the heat shield and get those out of our way. That way turbo can clear. And then we're gonna go ahead and take our, should be 8 10 millimeter bolts or nuts for the exhaust manifold here. 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom. You might have to use different assortments of extensions and swivels to get underneath it, but decently easily easy to access. So one more thing on the bottom here, this little 10mm nut, take that one loose. That's what kind of allows your converter to move around to get it off of the turbo a little bit. So you don't have to take it all the way off, just take it loose. So almost to the point of pulling this thing out. One thing I'm going to add here, to get one of these bolts right here, I just took the little C-clip off of the wastegate and then took the 10mm nuts off of this bracket just so I could slide it out of my way to make it a little bit easier. Just make sure you do not lose this little C-clip that goes on the wastegate arm. And you've got one more bolt that needs to come off, which is the coolant feed line. So it is right there. It is another E10. And then you'll also want to take this hose assembly off right here, carefully off the thermostat housing, because they also like to break. They're known for that. So once you get that out, then the turbo should come out. All right, guys, so as you can see, it's dark. So basically there is a coolant line, the return, I believe, coming off of the back of the turbo. And it's right beside the one that went right here. I was talking about taking that bolt off. Well, the nut is kind of hard to get to. It's like a flare nut, similar to a flare nut. And I pulled the converter out of the way. There's 3 bolts down there on the flex pipe. And I pulled the other retaining nut off for the converter to come off. Dropped it straight down through the bottom. And I tried to get to that coolant line, and it was so corroded and almost already stripped, like, because just from rust eating away at it. I put a wrench on it, a V-groove wrench, and it just immediately spun. It was seized, so I had to kind of walk the turbo off, and the banjo bolt for that coolant line, I will show you right here. This one right here, I had to take it off with a wrench. Probably what's going to happen is both of these lines are going to end up having to be replaced. I'll have to tell the customer about that. And I also seen some good failure points that were happening on this turbo here. I was talking about the old feed line being clogged. If you look right down in there, it is all gummed up. So probably wasn't even hardly lubricating this bearing. And there's some pieces of metal in there, possibly timing chain, because these things like to have timing chain issues. That's what it appears. So that will have to be addressed in the future, of course. And I'm going to do an oil change on this vehicle, you know, for the new turbo. Try to extend the life of the new turbo the best I can. And but yeah, the turbo's out, comes out the top. What's left, tomorrow I'm going to start back on it. I'm going to double nut or use a stud extractor and pull these studs out, because the kit I've got comes with new studs, new nuts, gaskets, all that good stuff. The oil return will have to be replaced, because even though the clip was out, and as I mentioned before, they like to break, as I was just slowly wiggling it, just broke right off. It's stuck into the return hole, will not come out. I've even tried with a flathead trying to get it out, or a pick, and even now that it's broke, I still can't even get it out. So we'll have to address that tomorrow. Like I said, I'm going to list some torque specs on this video. I don't want the video to drag on too long, so I'm probably going to end up just doing the old route of, you know, installation is reversal of removal. If I need to make a part 2, or if I have time, I will on installation. But like I said, everything is kind of reverse of what you had, and always do coolant flushes best you can, and oil changes to help flush out any old gunk in the system. And yeah, so I believe that is going to be it for tonight, guys. And I'm going to put also a listing in the description of the part I got. It's got a pretty good, it's got a lifetime warranty, assuming that you do certain things they ask, or placing certain lines, flushing certain lines. It's from 1A Auto. It was decently priced, but I'll put that down in the description as well. So hopefully you guys could use some information from this video, and I guess like and subscribe, and hopefully next video will be out shortly.